Alright, everybody, back for part 2 of why I stopped being a Christian, why I left Christianity. I guess if you saw the first part, you know, I could never really say I was a Christian. I believed I was. I wanted to think I was. I thought it somehow made me righteous or better or made up for my lonely, pathetic life. Funny how God just can't sort that stuff out. Jeez. Needs your constant groveling. Whoa. Needs your constant attention. Oh, he really needs attention all the time, constantly, day and night, praising and worship. What the hell, that bird is flying in place. That's pretty amazing. It's a sign from the angels. Alright. I'm gonna keep this on. Okay. Anyways. So, it was getting to a point where I started to entertain withdrawing from the church as the more and more painful and searing it got. No relief. And where I was losing my mind. I was losing my free will, my ability to really choose. I don't know how to describe how terrifying that is. My literal ability to decide things for myself was being, eroded, being ground away, pulverized. And this is what God wanted? This is how God chose me. That's what that teacher I was talking to was saying. Oh, this is a great opportunity for you. Great opportunity. 18 months of terror before I even knew what my life was, before I ever had a chance to try and enjoy it. So I knew I wanted to be a filmmaker, but that desire, that drive in me was being quenched and whatever the word, put out like a flame. That was the scariest part. I had no identity, had no ability to speak to people or make friends because I didn't have me. I didn't have my own mind. I'm trying to get this motherfucker. Sorry, camera's so close. There. Fasten that down. I was losing all ability to emotionally respond to people. What I mean by that, literally, I see someone have a response. Oh, that's a human being. I understand. They say something funny, I laugh. I was losing my ability to laugh, losing my ability to feel anything, to respond to what was going on in films. Imagine that. You're just nothing. You're no longer a person. It's like you're on some horrible drug, some hallucinogen that wipes away all agency. And I had the rest of my life to look forward to in searing pain. I was going totally insane. And once in a while, I would sit down, try and watch a DVD again, even though it hurt me. I remember once I was watching some of Rumble in the Bronx, and I got really scared after I watched some of it. Oh no, I worshipped that. I worshipped that feeling of being in the film, even though it was still painful to watch. It was scary. By this point, again, I had already wanted to be a filmmaker since I was 17. I was 18 now. I always loved movies. Movies were the most moving thing since I was a kid. And, one of my favorite filmmakers was David Fincher. Deeply, could feel, what was in his films. I remember even seeing parts of Alien 3, not knowing he directed it. And I could feel something about it that I knew I loved so much. There's a integrity to it. For all its troubles and flawed story, there's a way it's put together, an integrity to the way it's shot, edited, the performances, the cinematography, and I could feel it in seeing David Fincher's commercials. I could just get this feeling something was connecting to me. Oh, but that's evil. I remember a priest even saying in church that you shouldn't be watching football, or basically saying football was evil. And I told it to another priest years later. He's like, really? He said that? Oh, man, I'm like, that's your fucked up church. Get your fucking stories right. Another priest said, oh, you shouldn't say your husband is your life or your wife is your life. You say Jesus is in your life, is your life. Well, how the fuck does that work out? If you're you're supposed to love and honor your spouse, but there's someone else you're supposed to be with even more? Well, then how do you be with your spouse? That's why you're hypocrites. You just live your own lives, you Christians. You do what you like. Ultimately, you're driven by a pleasure principle. When you say that, how do you decide what's right or wrong if you don't have heaven or hell as punishment? Well, wait a minute. All you're saying is that heaven is a lot of pleasure for a very long time, and hell is a lot of pain for a very long time. So all you're saying is, if you do something that is wrong according to the Bible or God or whatever you decide on, because you all can't get your story straight, that you will be in a lot of pain for a very, very long time, and it will be made by a very, very powerful person. Well, if that's the case, we have that right here in many ways. We have each other to be accountable to. We have ourselves, and all you righteous hypocrites who say, well, but what if you have no problem killing people or stealing or raping? I'm like, there are people that do that. Do you think this is some hypothetical? We in fact live in that world. Many of them are Christians, by the way, or say they're Christians. Many of them believe they're going to heaven forever because they simply, they're repented. God wiped away that evil doing. He died for it. I believe in grace. Mike Pence went on TV and said about Donald Trump after he said that pussy-grabbing remark and about groping women and just going up to them and kissing them when his wife was pregnant, by the way. And then he came out and kissed that woman and acted like she was like arm candy. Mike Pence went out, and of course Mike Pence was horrified, but he made it about God. So really, if you oppose Donald Trump, you oppose God himself. And he said, yes, what Donald Trump said was wrong, but I believe in grace. I believe in God. I believe in God's mercy. Oh, no, please, don't say I'm against God. Anything Donald Trump says is right. So whatever you all fascists need, God is on your side. How nice. Everything's permitted. Because what could a tiny bit of suffering in this life mean when it's so righteous to suffer? Well, mainly non-white people, gay people, women, transgender people, poor people, children, the elderly, anyone except rich, white, straight men. So anyways, back to David Fincher. So I always loved his films, and one night it was getting deliriously painful to where I remember being at my friend of my family at my dad's house and helping him like move a couch or something, and thinking, I wish I could just enjoy this private, quiet moment instead of feeling like I'm being seared out of my body, burned and cut, to be with God. Now think about that. If you believe in Christianity, why wouldn't that be the most righteous, wonderful path possible? Because it means God wants you so badly. You can always be with him. You don't have these distractions of nature and movies and food and friends and TV and sex and relationships. You could just be with God all the time. Doesn't sound so great though when you actually are going through it, which was mental illness is what it was. So when I was 18, I just decided to sit down. I was almost unconscious and watch Panic Room, David Fincher, movie I'd seen many times. I loved it. I had the 3-disc special edition DVD. As I was watching it, something happened. Something terrifying but wonderful and amazing. It almost felt like being recoiled out of this horrible feeling of religious delusion and shot like a can into a tunnel out of it. And in that moment, one moment, I realized I don't have to do this anymore. It was the scariest thing I had avoided facing for so long, because I never considered it a possibility that I could renounce what little faith I had, but renounce Christianity. I never thought I could. if my teachers were so good, well, see, it's all nonsense, contradictions, because of course they can never say it's acceptable to save your life by giving up your religion, because what does that compare to suffering forever? And of course that would poke holes in their little fucking story. But it also means they can't show any regard for you as a human being through your misery. And it's always an utter, it's like you're beneath their contempt when they say stuff like, we sympathize with how hard it is to be gay if you can't, if it's wrong to be in a relationship with another person of the same sex. I know it's tough, but it's because I care about you. That's why I want it. So the care means nothing. It's good for nothing. It's all about how to inflict punishment on you while saying they care. So there was never any option given to me, or that I could even consider, of leaving. I had to discover it in the most painful means possible. Watching Panic Room, it just shot. It was like being shot through a tunnel. I automatically realized, I don't have to do this anymore, and I was so happy. In that moment, I realized I saved my own life. That's how it felt. Not that this movie saved my life. I saved my own life. By no means was I through with my trauma and this religiosity, the pain that it would cause me. I would go through bouts again in 2007 to 8 and in 2012 to 13. They were different those times though, because I had already consciously decided, okay, by now I'm an atheist. I know I don't believe this stuff. But I was so glad, and yet it was so painful, because this meant, for the first time in my life, I remember literally waking up the next day and thinking, what do I do now? I've never been this person that was not thinking somewhere in the background there's God or religion to sort of protect me, even though it never offered protection. But just you're used to something being there all the time. When it's gone, it's a strange feeling. Which time? Good. Doing good on time. It was weird. I woke up thinking, okay, what do I do now? I had no idea. I was like, man, I hope I can be an atheist, meaning these delusions don't come back. And it was weird just trying to go through life and then hiding it too. That was bad. So I did go to church one last time, but I was smiling through it. I was like, this doesn't affect me anymore. I am so glad. I almost felt like it was hurting God a little bit. I was like, I'm so glad I'll go one last time just because I have to, and that's it. Bye-bye. But I didn't tell anybody for about another year and a half because I was so scared to tell anyone. I thought it made me evil. I still had all those latent judgments in me, and as the weeks and months went on, I was so afraid I would be evil. Oh my goodness, do I now change my morality? Do I believe abortion's okay now? Part of me was just wanting, starting to evolve on that and just think, well, what's wrong with abortion? But I'd get so panicked and scared by that thought. Or sex before marriage, or masturbation. Can you believe that? An atheist thinking I shouldn't masturbate. As if it was wrong. But see, I still had that grip on me, that hold of feeling like I might go to hell. And also, speaking about the cruelty of religion, what it instilled in me, other people, other classmates, who were more empathetic, who actually knew what it was like to relate to another person, said it was a problem for them to think, oh, their friend's going to hell or something. Me, I never cared. I was like, well, yeah, what's wrong? You got to punish the wrong, right? Big deal, never concerned for me. So imagine if supposedly this thing's so great, this belief, this faith, whatever you call it. I know so many people no, it's not about a religion, it's about a relationship with God. Whatever you call it, I don't care. How could you say that's so great when it gave me so little concern for another person? I had no regard for the thought that anyone would go to hell. By the way, how do Christian parents reconcile the idea that, vast and wide is the path to hell and narrow is the path to heaven, So you must think most of your kids are probably going to go to hell, right? Because at any moment they may be led astray. You never know where the devil's going to come lurking from. May come through the kids' toys, may come through the TV, from the iPad, from movies, from sports. You don't know. Oh, from dealing with boys and girls, relationships and stuff. Starting to be, attracted to people. You never know. Oh, hey, going to hell. So how could you do that? How could you not be in utter despair all the time thinking your kids may suffer forever in hell? Because you don't take it seriously. You're a bunch of lying hypocrites. By the way, anybody preaches to me in these comments, I just delete them. There's nothing I haven't heard. I tried going to priests and pastors and stuff. Nobody knew shit. Like, all that stuff, I thought they knew this ancient wisdom. When I was younger, I was like, what the hell? Like, this person's got basically no answers for me. One priest said, just be positive, even if you have to get a job at McDonald's. I'm still getting over this cold. I'm doing all right. Wow. What a view. So, boy, this is turning into an epic video. 18. I was realizing, okay, I got to figure out who I am, and I was still so emotionally shattered. I never believed, I thought I wouldn't be able to get a job, because I'm like, I'm estranged from what God wants. I'm abandoned him, or he abandoned me. That's what I really thought. And I was so scared, I felt like I was uncovered. So I was worried I wouldn't be able to get a job. I not only thought I wouldn't be able to ever, go out with a woman, I thought I would not be able to be attracted to another woman again. I had no concept of relationships or anything. All I knew was just, fucking just bury your own misery. Never complain about anything. I never told people anything about this for a long time. Because I thought, well, it's just good to not complain about it. You should never complain, never talk. Now all I do is rant and complain. I'm just kidding. But I hope this is helpful for someone else, too. And informative. Excuse me. And also it's a personal testimony about the power of faithlessness. I love mocking Christians. See, it's a deep, meaningful connection for me. It's not about anything you can look up in any book, which it really wasn't at the time. It was only later I started to come around on issues where I thought, okay, it makes sense. Because after a while, like when religious teachers and Rush Limbaugh said evolution wasn't real and God made everything, I believed that. I had to force myself to, because it was hard. And it still hurts me that I put that in me, that lie in me, that made me so uncomfortable. But I thought, well, you have to do it. To be right, I had a big problem with setting any boundary for myself to keep myself safe, emotionally or physically. But I couldn't do it, so it's like, well, that's what I'm told. Okay. Same with climate change. I always believed in greenhouse gas emissions, the climate models. But Rush Limbaugh said it. He's a Christian. And then I think some teachers talked about it. I thought, okay, well, apparently we don't cause climate change. And I would argue strongly against it. I hate that I made myself believe this thing that even I just did just for there was no reason. There was just there's just desire and ignorance and just blind faith. I thought, well, that makes you the right person. I had nothing else to go on in life. That's what you do. So amazing. If God's so good, why couldn't anything good about God get through to me? And if God is so great, why would God make someone so insane that they could never be close to him? Because that's what happened when I tried to be close to him. Again, I think this is all, Iron Age nonsense. Now, looking at it, I'm like, oh my goodness, it's so laughably obvious it's fake. It's like old ancient mythologies of any culture that involve deities, gods. Got my backpack on. How are we doing on time? 19 minutes. May have to do a part 3. Stop at the bathroom. So at 18, okay, got a job at a movie theater. Still, I was just shattered. At this point in my life, I was shattered. and believe, okay, like I was glad, but I still had this hurt and I still felt split in half, and I wish this thing had never happened to me. I wish I had admitted to myself I was an atheist before. And then the feeling, and so I was like slowly piecing myself back together, regaining the ability to feel anything and learning how to feel anything. Very painful, very difficult, no help, because I didn't have anything to guide. I didn't understand what mental health was. I didn't understand how helpful counseling could be, books could be. Didn't understand it. I just took abuse, especially from customers at my job and bosses, one boss at least, and just thought that's what life is. Until I started having, after many months, desires again, realizing I could like people, I could want to be around them, I could want to be around women. Horrible. So while you all, I don't say you all because some people are going through absolute hell too at those ages, but while people knew what it was like to be 18, 19, I didn't know what that was like. I was trying to figure, like, to me, I went through the ugliest thing imaginable, and I still had nightmares about it. I mean, I still had these moments of flashes of terror where I would feel like what I was doing was going to put me in hell forever, and I could feel it. And then also, I started gradually feeling this horrible churning, like, awful thing in me where I felt like the devil was trying to possess me. Now, I was like, oh no, man, I thought I'd abandoned faith, but now I felt like, well, God eventually was like, nope, you're too horrible, I couldn't accept you. That's what I really felt like I dragged you all this way, and nope, you couldn't even handle it, so go away, the devil can have you now. And basically for another, 19 to 22, 3 years, I started having the worst panic whenever I would hear or see anything with reference to like Satanism, paganism, anything like having to do with the occult. I remember seeing Hellboy in theaters, and when Hellboy does this little spell to bring Rasputin back to life, I felt like this horrible power, like, not power, but like horrible, something emerging inside me, like that spell was a power within me. And it got really bad when every day, morning to night, I was terrified. And anything to do with Satanism, I saw a documentary on Satanism on TV, saw a reference at Jimmy Kimmel Live. That was the first time it really terrified me. Uncle Frank was out on the street interviewing people about stuff, and some white guy with dreadlocks, he just drew a pentagram. And it was the weirdest thing. I felt like this is the worst, horrible thing, because he drew a pentagram and he said, "Hail Satan." And Uncle Frank didn't know what he was talking about. He's like, "What's that?" He said, "Hail Satan." When the guy walked away, he's like, "Oh, I don't know who this Satan character is, but he's a bastard." And I started believing I was horribly evil, because that thing came inside me like, oh no, I'm totally lost. And now, wherever I go, the devil is there. Whereas before I felt like I was in this horrible, painful path I was bound to, now I felt like didn't matter where I was in hell. And I would have that compulsive thought in my head of like, oh, hail Satan, hail Satan. And it was like this horrible thing that needed to be said in me. It was awful. And I was terrified, absolutely terrified. I had it was, although I will say this, way better, infinitely better than ever believing God was trying to rip me out of my body, because at least I could feel things like normal, but like emotions and feel my desires and want to be a filmmaker, but I was still nothing of a person, had no real ambition. I assumed I'll never be with a woman, like I'll just make movies, work my way up in the movie theater, somehow become a filmmaker, then die, and that's it. And I was fine, I didn't even care. It was only when I finally met a girl that I actually liked and went out with once in college, when I was 19, late 19 I think, that I thought, oh, I can actually want to be with someone. And now the thought of just never being with anyone, it was like despair to me and sad. And it was very painful too to try and navigate all that, deal with and understand that. I didn't understand how people related to each other. I remember asking another classmate, this girl who was a friend of the girl I went out with, I said, I can't understand what's going on. You think like, she's not into me or what? And she said, well, maybe she's got a boyfriend or something, went out with you as friends. I was so isolated from people. I had everything I learned about interaction, I felt like it was from movies and TV. And you don't see guys and women out together as friends in movies. It's usually they're, love stories. And I was shocked. I was like, what? Really? People do that? And this other girl's like, oh yeah, I went out with some guy like to see movies a couple times. I was like, huh? When does that happen? I didn't know that. And sure enough, yeah, she told me she had a boyfriend, whatever. And thank goodness, I was relieved. I was so miserable worrying about her. And it would have been nothing. It would have gone anywhere. But I was and when she told me that, I was like, okay. I was kind part of me upset that it happened, but I was really glad. I was like, oh, I'm surprised at what a relief it is. So it's like, oh, that's nice. And I still felt horrible guilt about my life, horrible guilt about other stuff. I was still deeply traumatized by what happened to me at 17. Deeply traumatized, meaning if anything brought that up again, I was shattered for days, years after it happened. And I was constantly terrified that the devil was going to possess me, that I was evil. I was seeing like pentagrams on my hands. I was fearing that if I saw any sharp object, I had to kill myself with it. Not that I wanted to, I didn't want to, but like I had to somehow. Like I had to do the worst thing. So it was terrifying. Even seeing like a screwdriver, I could feel like in my mind, I was imagining the feeling of it in my throat. So, hey, thank God for religion. God is great. Jesus is, having a relationship with Jesus is so great. It's like falling in love. That's what a sophomore religion teacher told me. I don't think if she went through all this, she'd want to, first of all, live. Because I was getting to the point where the devil stuff wasn't nearly as bad as the Christian stuff. Because at least by this point, I thought maybe there was a God, but like here's the thing, I wasn't fully an atheist because I didn't know how to explain the world or anything. I was so superstitious and ignorant. I thought, well, I guess I can reason out that there was a God that created everything. I can't do that now because now I know better. But God created everything until the point where you have this contradiction in me. That how could you want someone so bad? How could God want someone so badly that they couldn't even live their life? It's like, hurry up, die, I need you in heaven, but I couldn't die. And if I did die, I would go to hell. So, or what I was more scared of, going to heaven. Because I knew what that feeling was like in me, no desire, just like drugged up, lobotomized. It was horrifying. And how could you want to live through that? So for you, it's fine because it feels good. In other words, it's just your favorite thing to do and believe in. But for someone else, it's so horrifying. Well, that to me was what broke my faith. It was only later that came like an understanding that, oh, this is total nonsense. The Bible's been mistranslated so many times. There's been additions, subtractions. Certain books are left out, certain books left in. It was a horribly misogynistic thing. Like, it's just nonsense. The whole idea of a Jesus and Old Testament God, I'm like, how could people really believe there was an ancient flood? All this crap. The world's 10,000 years old or 6,000. 6,000 years old. Nonsense. Utter garbage. All the rationalizations for belief, such as, people believed it for 2,000 years. Well, wait a minute. What would you have said 1,900 years ago or 1,950 years ago when Christianity was barely what it is, not recognizable compared to what it is today, brand new? It was a cult, meaning it was small, it was in enclaves. What would you have said then? Because you wouldn't have been able to say that. What should people have then believed? So you're saying you don't really believe in God, you believe in people. Because you believe that you can look at people and say, oh, that's my reliable indicator for faith. When I thought faith is supposed to be its own, its great thing. It's not supposed to have rationalization. Blessed are those who believe and have not seen. But apparently you don't believe that. Okay, you don't believe the Bible. So I could mess with you and say, oh, you're really, an atheist who's trying to make Christians look bad. All right. Bathroom break. I can feel it right now. the angels have declared I need a bathroom break, and I'll be back for part 3.